Burning Point.
Hello and welcome to the show with me, Ekaterina Kudashkina. The year of 2014 has been marked by a strengthening of the Asian vector in Russian foreign policy. A recent visit by the Russian President Vladimir Putin to India appears to be one of the key developments in that direction. Though these visits are annual, this one has turned out to be very special, defining the bilateral ties for years to come. Now we are joined by our guest speaker Boris Volkhonski, Deputy Head of the Center for Asia and Middle East at the Russian Institute for Strategic Studies.
You know, every time the summits like these happen, they are characterized as outstanding and unique. But this time is probably the first time in recent history when I can say these words with total confidence. Because, well, it's not just the matter that there is a new government in India, although this is an important factor as well. But what I would like to describe as unique is the content of the agreements, not the quantity of the agreements, but the contents, the quality of the agreements reached at the summit and their prospects. Well, if they are implemented, and I hope they will be, if they are implemented, they will really open a new page, not only in Russian-Indian bilateral relationship, but also in the whole situation in Eurasia in general. And since Eurasia is probably the most important part of the world, that means that it will influence the global situation as well. I can go on with the concrete points if you're not asking me any other questions, or maybe later. But the main document is the joint statement called Druzhba Dosti. Well, it is already very symbolic that the document, even in its English version, was called with the Russian and the Hindi word. Not just friendship, but Druzhba and Dosti, which means friendship in the two languages. The symbolism of this is that Russia and India are really going to establish a bilateral relationship which is not going to look around and see what reaction this may create in other third parties. This direct relationship is also symbolized in the fact that, Russia and India has reached an agreement on polishing diamonds. Russia is the main area of extracting diamonds from the earth, and India is the main, I don't know how you call it in English, what is the correct word, but in cutting diamonds, producing cut diamonds. So, but the whole trade in this sphere is monopolized by some international and foreign Western companies. And the fact that the two countries have reached an agreement to establish direct links and to have a direct flow of diamonds, uncut diamonds from Russia to India and cut diamonds from India elsewhere. Maybe some of them will go back to Russia, which I think it's also symbolic. Then the symbolism is the fact that this was the third meeting of our two leaders, President Putin and Premier Narendra Modi, after the new government in India came to power. And the first two meetings took place within the framework of BRICS. One was the summit of BRICS in Brazil in July, and the other was a mini summit of BRICS on the side when the BRICS leaders met during the G20 summit in Brisbane in Australia. So this also means that Russia and India are not just establishing or developing bilateral relationship, but they are the pillars of a new, very important and very influential center of power, which is BRICS, which is the two countries are equally opposed to the unipolar world order, and developing their relationship within their multilateral format is very important to oppose this the attempts to retain the unipolar world order. Also, what is very important is that during the summit, Russia expressed its willingness and desire to see India as a permanent member of Shanghai Cooperation Organization, which is also a kind of alternative to this unipolar world order I was talking about before. So BRICS is on the global arena, and SCO is in Eurasia, which also means that it's a global phenomenon. And coming back to the bilateral relationship, I must say that politically and ideologically there has never been any contradictions between Russia or Union of Soviet Socialist Republics before and India. But the economic component of the relationship has always been lagging behind. $10 or $11 billion a year is nothing to talk about, even compared to the trade between India and China, which despite all the contradictions have about $70 billion of volume of trade. The Russian-Chinese trade is approaching $100 billion. So 10 or 11 billion, which is between Russia and India, is nothing to talk about. And what is more important, that the basic component of our bilateral economic relations has always been the military defense cooperation. And now, if you look at the joint statement, which has 35 points, only one point of them is specifically dedicated to military defense cooperation. All others are in a whole array of other spheres, and which means that, well, this necessity, the need for broadening our cooperation and expanding it to other spheres is felt by the leaderships of the two countries.
We're discussing the future of Russia-India relationship with our guest speaker Boris Volkhonski, Deputy Head of the Center for Asia and Middle East at the Russian Institute for Strategic Studies.
Burning Point.
There are certain stereotypes. When, for example, when you say India, for a northern Russia, what illusions that would cause? That would be tea, that would be elephants, that would be yoga, or that maybe be Hindi films and Indian dances. Well, I think that would exhaust all associations, all illusions. But India has gone a long way, well, I wouldn't say away from these stereotypes, because they are there, and the Indian tea is still the best one, or one of the best in the world. And elephants are still there, and films and dances are also very beautiful. But India is not only limited to these stereotypes. India is one of the leaders in software production. It's, I would say, a cosmic power. It's a not very well-known fact, at least it wasn't very much reflected in Russian media, that India's satellite reached the Mars orbit very recently, about 2 months ago, I think in October, or maybe late September.
Well,
and
it's a nuclear power. It's a nuclear power.
It's a nuclear power as well. And these facts, these features have also been reflected in the joint statement, because we are not going to cooperate in traditional goods only, but also in innovative technologies, in space sphere, in nuclear power. The agreement has been reached to build 3 more power blocks in Kudankulam power station, nuclear power station, and also about 10 blocks elsewhere in India. And President Putin, before his visit, had said that Russia has a potential to build 25 nuclear power stations in India. Probably 10 would be a very good first step to implement that objective.
Well, quite ambitious prospects, and that, I'm certain, creates certain uneasiness in a country which also claims to be the key international partner of India, and that is the United States. And I believe that this visit has been very closely watched overseas.
Yes, it was, and it created a really nervous reaction in the United States. Of course, they just used as a pretext that the leader of Crimea was included in Russian delegation. And it also shows that Russia and India do not, they build their relationship on their bilateral basis and based on their national interests only. There is, it's nobody else's matter, nobody else's business who is included in this or that delegation. But, of course, definitely the United States was troubled, and as you correctly said, it claims to be the key partner. It claims to be the key player everywhere in the world. But
kind of overstretching its abilities, I believe.
Well, if you'd like me to talk about the United States, probably we'll need another program, because it will take a long time. Definitely it is, and it is trying to put too big a coat on a too small a body.
Yeah, I guess. This is Burning Point. We're discussing the future of Russia-India relationship with our guest speaker Boris Volkhonski, Deputy Head of the Center for Asia and Middle East at the Russian Institute for Strategic Studies. India is known for its pragmatic stance in international politics, and many analysts are saying that they see no contradiction between India developing cooperation with Russia and India maintaining ties with the United States. So they're saying that this could be a win-win situation for India, and I'm pretty much sure that India is capable of handling it. Another question is whether the United States is capable of handling it in this well and balanced manner. But what could it expect from the United States at this point of time?
Well, definitely the spheres in which Russia and India have reached some kind of agreements and memorandums of understanding, they are very competitive spheres, including nuclear sphere, nuclear energy, and this is probably one of the spheres where United States would like to increase its participation, especially after the so-called nuclear deal of 2005-2008 during Bush's presidency, which opened the way for American firms to cooperate with India.
On a very doubtful basis, by the way, India has not got what it actually wanted from this deal. Do I get it right, or am I missing something?
Well, actually, the contracts have not been finalized, so
that's
one of the issues, and India is not a very, I must say that India is not a very easy partner to calculate, the details of contracts, and it will always look at its own interests and national interests in order to choose the best option.
That's a respectable position.
Yes, sure, definitely, but sometimes it's not very easy, not very easy to go on inertia of a previous relationship, to just say we are friends and that's why you are to present some preferences for us. No, that's not the case with India. India is always, as you said correctly, that India is always following its own balanced position, and in developing a relationship with one country, it doesn't close doors for all others. So, in present situation with the United States, there is a very delicate and peculiar thing. I think that the invitation to Obama to visit the Republic Day celebrations in January is in a way also a symbolic gesture, because Premier Narendra Modi for many years was a very unwanted person in the United States. He was denied a visa in 2005, and since then, for many years, actually until he came to power in spring this year, the State Department stated that it's not going to change its position. Only when it became clear that Narendra Modi will be the future premier, the United States had to adjust its position. And now it's trying to court India in any possible manner. Definitely, you see, also this should be looked at in a global context. I'm positively sure that the events in Ukraine started it was not a coincidence that they started after BRICS countries decided to establish a common bank with interactions in local national currencies. Of course, it's not a matter of 1 or 2 years perspective, but it's a matter of midterm perspective. And in a midterm perspective, this means a severe blow to the monopoly of a US dollar, first of all, and to all other remnants of the Bretton Woods system. And I think that for the United States, there is probably the main task, main objective they follow in its dealings with other countries is to break this unity of BRICS countries. And, of course, the fact that Narendra Modi was denied a visa for many years cannot go unnoticed in India or elsewhere. But what the government is trying to do now is to show that these personal matters do not matter in politics. And so the invitation could be for Obama to visit the Republic Day celebration could be looked at as a kind of attempt to rectify the relationship and to eliminate whatever ill feelings could be felt from the past.
Precisely, to be as polite as a thousands-year-old nation could be. The United States is slowly going down to number 2. It has been overcome by China, calculated by PPP GDP and PPP equivalent. It's a really strong blow. Do you think that the United States could recover?
Well, we're coming to the issue of war and peace because, many analysts say that the only way for the United States to recover is a new global war, which I hope will not happen. So I wouldn't like to see that kind of recovery.
I wouldn't call that a recovery. I mean, being blown away from the surface of Earth is not exactly an idea of recovery, huh?
Yes, but some strategists in the United States might feel that they are safe due to their system
That's
of
a lack of secondary education.
Yeah, but as for the trends and trends in global politics, I think that really new centers of power are emerging. China, as you correctly said, has overcome the United States in terms of purchasing power, but not in absolute figures, of course. I think that the total GDP of BRICS has overcome that of, or is close to overcome that of the European Union. So that means that the monopoly that the United States felt during the second half of the 20th century is coming to an end. I think it's now for the United States to revisit and reformulate their stance in the global position, because dealing with Others using the power of force, military force primarily is not an option. Even if we look at countries like Iraq and Afghanistan, where there was a military presence of the United States for some years, we see that they haven't achieved their objectives there. Even on the contrary, they've created powers that are now becoming dangerous for them and for the rest of the world as well.
Well, precisely. So to survive, perhaps it could be a good idea for them to adopt a more conciliatory stance in the global matters.
Well, but that doesn't even depend on who will be the next president of the United States. It probably depends on some other forces which are acting from behind the screens in the United States. And those forces are still preserving that inertia of old way of thinking, I'm afraid. So I'm not over-optimistic about the future of global relationship.
Sir, thank you so much. And just to remind you, our guest speaker was Boris Volkhonski, Deputy Head of the Center for Asia and Middle East at the Russian Institute for Strategic Studies. And now we end this edition of Burning Point, brought to you by me, Ekaterina Kudashkina. Thank you so much for staying with us. Goodbye and take care.